What is going on, everybody? My name is John Tyler and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how my partner and I won a bass fishing tournament. Alright guys, so without further delay, let's get into the story. So if I remember correctly, this tournament occurred in maybe early November, maybe a Saturday, maybe November 2nd, November 3rd. And it turned out to be one of the last, if not the very last high school fishing tournament I would ever fish. Because shortly after this fishing tournament, COVID really hit hard and high school sports were canceled across the board, across the country. And that included bass fishing tournaments. And you know, that really sucked missing out, but obviously I'm not the only one affected by this, so you can't look at it like that. But looking back, I look at this tournament win as leaving my high school bass fishing career on a very, very high note. So let's kind of break down this day. So let's see, let me dig into the memory banks here. So it was incredibly cold. It was a very cold and very rainy November day. There was intermittent storms throughout the day. This body of water is prone to having pretty big storm systems, heavy rain. It was raining hard and it was really cold. It was pretty miserable conditions. I guess you could say it was pretty good fishing conditions. It's kind of a nasty, dreary, gross day, but it wasn't too nice on the old hands. I'll put it that way. So we started the day off by hitting some floating docks. Our thought process going into fishing those docks was to see if we could catch a couple small, limit filler Kentucky bass to begin the day, just to have something to fall back on in case our day didn't go as planned. So we roll up to the dock and we're fishing around, and my partner Aaron flips the spinnerbait up, into the dock and just starts slow reeling it and catches a super nice keeper Kentucky spotted bass. And at this particular lake, they only have to be 12 inches, but this one was probably 14 inches, so a super solid fish, maybe a pound and a half fish, really solid Kentucky bass for around here. So we're like, oh man, maybe we're onto something, because generally if there's one spotted bass on a dock, there's a few more chilling with them. They kind of wolf pack like that. So that was the case. We fish a couple more slips and he flips another one into the boat out on the spinnerbait. It was great spinnerbait conditions, like I mentioned earlier in the video, storming, windy, off-colored water, chop on the water, and wind, all super prime spinnerbait conditions. And he caught two on the spinnerbait right quick. It was pretty awesome, probably within 30 minutes of us beginning the tournament. So, the juices are flowing, getting excited, very happy about that. Both of us are pretty jacked about that. So we were kind of thinking, if we fish these docks hard, we might be able to pull out a limit really quick. So he is fishing the spinnerbait, and I pick up kind of a brokeback shad Rapala thing. It's just kind of a crankbait with a joint in the middle, so it's got a really unique action. Not something people throw very often, but pretty effective. And I start paralleling the outside flat faces of the docks, because obviously I can't go up into the slips, because as I bring my crankbait out, it would hit that pole that connects the slips and I would get hung up and break off. So I'm just kind of paralleling the outside walls. And we roll up on the one wooden floating dock in this particular pin of docks. And it will go down as the magical dock because it held fish, and it really held fish. But as you're about to see, it didn't exactly go as planned. Imagine that. So what happened is I casted this particular crankbait parallel to this wooden dock and just start slow reeling it down. This was actually the first time I'd ever thrown this bait. I had never thrown a jointed bait like that before, so I guess I was inexperienced, but it's just a crankbait with some unique action, so it's not that big a deal. So I throw it out there, parallel the dock, crank it down, and get hammered right by the boat. And believe it or not, the joker comes off. Not a huge deal. It still stinks because fish came off in the tournament, and it was definitely a keeper. It was a big spotted bass again. But crankbait fish, if they hit by the boat and your rod's not quite soft enough, they can come off. And he came off, and I wasn't too perturbed, just a little starting to kind of think about what I did at the previous tournament that I had, I made a video on a couple weeks ago. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. I'll link it above. But I'm starting to think, oh man, I'm losing fish again. Nice. After we catch some fish, I'm starting to lose them again. I'm kind of a repeat offender in that category. So I'm starting to kind of get in my head, and then I make another cast and hook one again. Giant spotted bass. Fight him to the boat. Play him super soft. Not horsing him by any means. And he comes off by the boat prior to getting in the net. Imagine that. 2 keepers that I've lost in a span of 5 minutes. Sound familiar? It sounded familiar to me, trust me. So I'm like, am I really going to do this again? Am I going to lose us a tournament, or at least lose us a limit? At the time, we didn't realize that what we were on would win us a tournament. I'm like, am I going to do this again? Am I going to choke like this again? Yes, I am going to choke like this again. It's hard to believe. I make a third cast and hook into one that I never saw, so I guess I can't guarantee that this fish was a keeper size fish, but based upon the size of the fish we'd caught previous, I'm just going to go with, yeah, it had to at least have been a 12-incher. So I lost 3 keepers in the span of 10 minutes, and then the bite died. Aaron couldn't get bit on his spinnerbait, and I could not get bit on the crankbait. We only got bit when it was raining, and raining hard. So as soon as the rain would subside, the bite would just totally evaporate and dissipate. So I'm a little heartbroken. I'm like, man, I've done that again. I have managed to screw up another tournament and lose the exact same amount of keepers that I had lost previously in the same tournament where I was losing all kinds of fish, and I'm doing it again. What is my deal? So needless to say, we put that bait down. We weren't sure if it was unlucky or cursed, or if the hook sucked, or a combination of 3, but I made the decision just to put that joker down and not fish with that bait. It might sound silly, but in retrospect, it was probably the right decision because I kind of had like a mental lapse, I suppose, with that bait. So I just put that thing down and decided not to touch it for the rest of the day because I didn't want to lose another fish on it. So, you know, the bite, we fished the rest of that marina, and the bite in there is just dead. I think I got one smack on a spinnerbait blade, and I stink with a spinnerbait. That was it for the longest period of time. We run around the lake, make a decent little run, fish a totally different strategery. Think we crank and flip and fish rocks and bluffs and, you know, fish everything. It starts raining again, and we're kind of like, you know what? Fish can reload on those docks. Shake it off. Let's go try it again. This is after several hours of fishing away from the dock. So, I mean, we're pressed for time at this point. You know, we probably have an hour and a half of fishing, and we hadn't got a bite on anything except for the docks. You know, we fished the docks in the morning. Aaron caught 2 keepers. We have 2 solid keepers in the boat, and your boy right here proceeded to lose 3 keepers. So, you know, we had a limit chilling over there. 3 of them are still in the water, mind you. So we're like, we screwed this tournament up. Not we, me. Let's go try the docks, see if they reloaded. No, you know, we might as well try to fish where we knew at one point at least there was fish. So we go back over there, and we fish the slips, no bites, you know, where Aaron had caught them previously. And we go back to the magical dock, the magical wooden dock. And I tie on a bait that I have, at that point in my life, never fished once. I got a hunch that this bait might work, okay? And I'll show you the bait in just a moment. So I pick this lure up. So we get to that magical dock, and I'll show you the bait in just a moment. And I throw this bait. I've literally never thrown this combination before, okay? So I throw that thing out there, and we're fishing over like 60 feet of water. And I just throw it out there and count it down to 15. So I let the bait fall. I recall counting to a count of like 15. So there's no telling what the fall rate of this particular lure was. So, you know, it could be down there 20 feet is my guess, you know, after 15 seconds. So I let it fall for a really long span of time, and then I just start slowly cranking it back. Slowly cranking it back. And then I lean into one. I was like, what? Okay. And then I bring it to the boat, and it's not a big fish, okay? It's not a big fish at all. It's like a 12-inch smallmouth, and in that tournament, smallmouth had to be 18 inches. So it didn't keep, but it kind of made me think, you know, there's still fish over there, and they want to eat this bait that I tied on. So, you know, we went past that dock, and then we came back to it again, and I fired out there with that same lure and let it go down to a count of like 20. Started reeling back, and I hook into a big spotted bass. Big for me. It was actually my personal best, which is pretty cool thinking, looking back at that. I caught my personal best spotted bass in a tournament. I lean into him, and he's big. He's big. He was way down deep, super deep, because I counted down to 20. There's no telling how deep this lure fell at that point. And I'm fighting him back. We get him in the net, and we're like, yes, that's 3 in the boat. Now we're talking. You've made up for at least one of those fish you screwed up on. So we got my personal best spotted bass in the boat, and it's pig. You'll see it in the thumbnail, and I'll drop the picture here right now just so you guys can see it. It's the one, I think, in my right hand at the very end of the picture. It doesn't matter. So now we got 3 keepers in the boat. Like I said earlier in the video, we were only catching when it rained. So it's pouring down rain the entire time. We're getting soaked. The conditions are miserable. It's like maybe 40 degrees, soaking wet. Got my rain gear on, but we're still wet. and I fire another cast out there, and the wind is absolutely just ripping. Aaron's doing everything he can to keep the boat in position. I throw the little bait out there again, let it count down to 20 once again, and maybe 3 casts after my personal best, I hook into another super solid spotted bass and fight him back to the boat, and Aaron lands him, and he's in the boat, and now we got 4. So we're pretty juiced up, but we're running out of time. We're almost done. You know, the tournament is almost finished with. So we got to get one in the boat, and we got to make it happen fast. And we're fighting the conditions. I just can vividly see this moment in my head. Wind created current, just pushing us against the dock. We're trying to keep the boat in position while fishing ultra light baits at the exact same time. It's not easy to do. It's a balancing act, and we're trying to pull together a 5-fish limit while fighting all these elements after the adversity we faced in the beginning of the day. There's just a lot going on, and we're getting kind of nervous, but we're also really excited because we're on to some fish. And then I think Aaron fires in there with a spinnerbait once again, and he hooks into just a solid keeper fish, and we have our limit. We are just absolutely pumped. He catches that fish. We load up and we leave because we're about to run out of time. We fished until, you know, the very last second that we would have been able to, given our time allotment. And we got 5 in the boat, and I kind of made up for the mistakes I made earlier in the day. And I was just so happy that I made a decision in game time to a bait that ended up working and putting some solid fish in the boat. I'm a big proponent of going out there and fishing with my strengths, you know, fishing things that I've caught fish on before. I don't necessarily like to experiment a lot, especially on tournament day. But this day I just had a hunch and I gave it a try and it worked. So if that doesn't prove to you guys that you should experiment every now and then, I don't know what does, because literally never thrown the bait before, cast it out there, personal best spotted bass, and a tournament victory. So we run back to the ramp. We got 5, and for whatever reason the 2 fish that I caught were trying to die on us, so we literally held them in the live well because they were floating up. I think it had something to do with the depth that we caught them in. Maybe their swim bladders were expanding, but we held them in the live well to ensure they didn't float up to the surface for probably 30 minutes, you know, as we waited for weigh-in to begin. For some reason it started late, so we were freaking out. We're like, oh, we got these 2 big old fish and they're not gonna live. But we did a great job, Aaron and I, and we kept those fish alive. You know, spotted bass kind of have teeth. You know, they have grittier crusher pads than largemouth or smallmouth. So our hands were, toes. Our thumbs were thoroughly chewed up. It was all worth it because we got up to the weigh stand, and we were one of the first to weigh in. We got up there, and I think we had like 1152. You know, not a giant bag by any means. Pretty small bag. But a small bag that wins is a winning bag. It turned out to be a super tough day for everybody. I think we might have been the only team to catch over 10 pounds of fish and may have been the only limit catchers of the whole day. And we won, and it was a super rewarding experience. I think there was 64 teams, so not a giant field, but not a super small field, a competitive field on a giant body of water. And we won, and it was just a great feeling. I felt like Aaron and I's practice at becoming better at the sport that we love really culminated into this tournament win. All worked together, and things worked out perfectly for us, and we fought through the adversity once again. I fought through my mistakes. I didn't let my head get to me, and continued to fish hard and made up for the mistakes I made earlier in the day, and still was able to win after losing 3 keepers. That doesn't happen too often, at least for me. So guys, I want to go ahead and show you this bait before I sign off. Alright guys, so this right here is the magical bait. It's just a 2.8 finesse swim bait. And like I said, never had ever thrown this lure prior to this tournament. I was just throwing it on a 1/6 ounce Ned rig head because I fished the Ned rig earlier in the day and I didn't want to retie a swim bait head. So I just stuck this thing on there, counted it down to 20 and slow reeled it back. Caught my personal best spotted bass. Now granted, a 275 spotted bass is not a giant, but a PB nonetheless. In this kind of purple hologram shad color, won the tournament for me. Alright everybody, so that is the retelling of Aaron and I's signature tournament win. It's something I look back on very fondly, very blessed to have that experience, very thankful for it, very happy. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this video, make sure to go down low and hit that like button, and we are so close to 3K subs, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button right there. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll see y'all in the next one.